The sponsor of this episode is Chadwell Supply, an OG in the multifamily industry. Chadwell Supply is the largest privately owned maintenance and repair supplier, and they deliver orders the next day from local warehouses across the United States. To find out how Chadwell Supply will make your day better, visit www.chadwellsupply.com/difference.
Hello, friends. Welcome to another episode of Optimized, a marketing performance podcast brought to you by the Multifamily Media Network. I'm Janet Rosseth, your host and 25-year veteran of multifamily marketing. And I'm really grateful that you pressed play on this today. I know you have a lot of podcast options, and we hope in this podcast to bring you just 1% better in your daily, personal, or professional life and some ideas on where you might be able to optimize your performance. I'm joined today with my friends and actually co-conspirators at Cadence Marketing Solutions, Shelly, Steitz, and Bilyeu. Both want to say hi. Shelly, you want to go first?
Tenured as Janet in the multifamily industry. In multifamily for the past 14 years, and I've worked on all sorts of different types of products. I've worked on the East Coast, I've worked in the Midwest, and I'm really just excited to be part of this podcast today and also to work with both Janet and Allie.
Glad to have you here today. It's going to be a fun conversation. Allie, you want to say hello?
Yeah, my name is Bilyeu, and I am just a 10-year veteran of the industry, starting from leasing and working my way up to marketing. I've been with Janet at Cadence Marketing Solutions for 4 years now as a senior consultant based on people performance. So really focused in on the leasing teams and the training of CRM systems, but also showing them the marketing behind what they're doing and how what they're doing affects the marketing and vice versa.
Awesome. So we're going to really file this episode today under building better practices when it comes to optimizing. We felt like this was the perfect timing to come on here and have a conversation about auditing your processes and prepping for budget season from the standpoint of what you hope and expect your experiences to be across your customer experience and customer journey, whether that's the prospect, the resident, or the employee experience. The three of us have had a lot of experience in auditing processes and flushing out friction on the processes that we deployed at our own employers and with clients now. And we're just seeing a lot of opportunity that we thought would be great to come out and share with you today. So, Shelly, do you want to go first and just explain really where you're coming at this conversation?
Yeah, I've been on the corporate marketing side for multifamily for so long, and I feel like there's always this pressure to have your marketing be perfect and to have no mistakes. But that's the reality is that most of us have content in 1,000 different places, and that's not even an exaggeration. So for us to have this expectation of that we're, one, never going to find a mistake, never going to find something that isn't connected properly within our tech, and especially as we add more tech, we really have to get comfortable with enthusiastic feedback is how I try to think about it. Like enthusiastically, like searching out and finding those places where things have broken down. So whether that's in the information that's out there, the information that's getting pushed out from your property management system, how the ILS is getting people to your teams, like all of those things. And the more eyes you have on it and the more you're able to seek out where that friction is happening, the stronger your marketing is going to be. And, I just recently had an experience at the company that I consult for where we discovered that an ILS app was showing a special that was no longer valid. And it wasn't on the website for the ILS and it wasn't in the back end, but for some reason it was still on the app. And I had this moment of just feeling like a little bit defeated. And I told Allie about this and she's like, that has to feel really good. It has to feel good that you like found that and you've been able to fix it. And I was like, that is the best way to think about that, because we discovered the problem and we solved it instead of it just being out there and nobody knowing about it. So I think we have to just, as marketers, as operators, we just have to get comfortable with being able to root out those things that are less than perfect to be able to fix them.
Right. I love that perspective and the whole enthusiastic perspective of how good that must have felt. I approached it when I heard that like, oh, all the little dark corners that friction can hide in or that inaccuracy can hide in, and how in the world can we ever know where they all are, right? Allie, how about you? Where do you come into this conversation from? What's your perspective?
Yeah, well, I think that it's just so important to constantly be auditing that leasing experience from the prospect lens. Because so many times we have our marketing hat on or our operations hat on that we forget that our bread and butter obviously comes from the prospect, and we need to make sure that that friction for the prospect is smooth. And a lot of times that's where you'll find those needles in a haystack. You can't just wait and rely on a phone call from a prospect saying, oh, hey, I see that you're offering 2 months free, and being flabbergasted by that because you're not, and wondering where that came from. And then essentially asking the prospect like, oh, where did you see that from?
Right. That's the worst, when you have to ask the prospect, where did you see it, rather than being able to know it right off the bat. But Shelly was so accurate that our marketing teams are often stretched so thin. It might be, 1 to 3 people per 30 properties, overseeing all the marketing and components. And like I said, little dark corners where friction can hide. It's hard to even imagine having time in the day to go audit everything that you're working on. I'm always a big fan if you can ask your property teams to take a role in auditing, whether it's test their advertising sites or ILS or chatbots or conversion tools. Every once in a while, they might flesh out something that you didn't know was happening. And then they also have a chance to take ownership of that a little bit. But we're actually seeing across the work that we do, we're seeing those requests for those audits coming from a lot of different directions in a lot of stakeholders that want all teams to be successful in the tools that are connected. So we're seeing it from vendors who want to make sure that their services for you are successful, and owners, investors, operators, managers. I mean, we're seeing it from everywhere, right? So how do you both feel about whose role is it to audit every once in a while, and how can we share the duty to make sure that everything's working correctly in the experience that we wanted?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think it's everybody's responsibility. And like I said before, the more eyes you have on your marketing that's out there, the more likely you're able to root out some of those issues that are happening. And, I think it is sometimes hard to get that buy-in of everyone, because they're like, well, that's marketing and that's marketing shop. And it's like, no, we all have a stake in this game. We all have a skin in getting our apartments rented and our townhomes rented, whatever you're renting. We're all responsible for that. And the more eyes you have on it, just the more likely you are to get to the bottom of some of those issues.
Sure. Allie,
Exactly.
What would you add in there?
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's a lot of tools out there. You would love for your team to take that on. And to an extent, yes, you've got your weekly checklists, for your MMRs, and things like that to send. But how many of those times do you just check the box and not actually do it? And so of course you want your leasing teams on that, because they need to understand how things feed, how the tech works on the operations and marketing side of things, and how that feeds in, so that when they do get those prospect calls, they're confident in that. And also confident in being to walk a prospect through, the website and things like that. But there are obviously tools out there, if there's a quick course correction that needs to take place, to kind of figure out where that friction lies, and help when we're all so busy. Honestly, people are doing way more with less now.
Definitely. And I think we often see that the first place people start are on the properties that are struggling. It's, obviously there's a reason it's struggling, there's something going on, but usually the reaction is to buy more leads, spend more on advertising, send more leads to the property, try to convert more. But I often feel like from the process that the three of us have been doing on auditing, it's almost better to first audit how leads are getting from advertising to property and then how they're being converted from the leasing team rather than spend more on ads, because you could be spending into a black hole and not knowing where it's actually breaking down. So from that perspective, let's talk about, I want to just give a little credit here to Ronald Harrington's podcast, Rooms with Ronald, on this network as well, because he and I have had a conversation out here. And outside of the podcast, even his 100 shops that he did in 1 year and the amount of friction that he incurred too, like it is happening everywhere. It's not just isolated cases. Every single property probably has friction happening somewhere right now. It's just the ones that are in the toughest position that seem to get the most attention. So let's talk about what we've uncovered on some of these and where some of the low-hanging fruit is. So that people listening can understand like some first places to check and identify if they've got breakdown there as well. Allie, you want to go first?
Yeah, exactly. And I think honestly, the first step in anything is to audit. Like if you're seeing a decrease in leads, audit. Don't just throw money at it. Don't just market it. Like
there's no
throw
magic wand.
Yeah, exactly. Audit, so you need to evaluate the effectiveness of your marketing and your leasing. And a lot of times, that happens with underperforming assets. Obviously, there's other times where, owners or operators or investors are going to want to be able to audit. But first and foremost is underperforming assets. And, one of the first things that we see with underperforming assets is it's not always a lead issue.
It's rarely ever a lead issue.
Never just a lead issue. Yes, that's the term. It's never just a lead issue. So a lot of times the first thing, that we tend to find is right there in the face of Google. That very first digital curb appeal, that there's inconsistent online ad presence and you're underutilizing your Google business listings. And that's low hanging fruit. That doesn't even have to do with SEM or, throwing ad money at anything. Just your SEO, which is organic. Okay. And your Google business listing, low hanging fruit right there that can be easily optimized for the first point of contact in that digital leasing experience.
Right. And sometimes I think we run into the friction being, even though it's a free resource, it takes a little bit of labor to update all the components within your Google business listing. It's not hard work, but it takes some time and attention to get it done. And then to continue to make sure that it's fresh for your search engine optimization. But in a lot of cases, there just isn't time on the marketer's bandwidth to do that. And site teams often don't have the access behind the Google account to update it for their own property. So that might be an area to just take stock of right now. Like, do your Google business listings need to be updated? And if so, what's holding you back from doing it? Is it a time thing? Is it a access thing? And how can you resolve it? I mean, that is the best place to use intern help, is for somebody to be able to just pay nothing but attention to Google business listings and not get distracted by every other fire that needs to be put out all day long. It doesn't have to be, Allie, you do these on a lot of properties. How long does it take to update a Google business listing and pull in all of the materials as far as amenities and floor plans and fresh photos and...
Yeah, obviously, if you're starting with like square one from scratch, maybe an hour or two, just depending on where you have to dig to find the things that you need. But honestly, a lot of the simple optimizations of the pieces of the Google business listing that are missing are so simple, like making sure that your office hours match your website, because that's going to help your SEO. Like the Google bots love that stuff to match. That's so easy. That should take 2 seconds, making sure that there's an appointment link on there that actually leads to your own website.
Yeah, that would be helpful.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we've seen a few of them lately that lead to a corporate website instead of the property website where the rest of the conversion tools are.
Exactly. Making sure that your reviews are responded to, owner's response. The Google bots love that. They love seeing an engaged owner's response on those reviews. But also, it's very important to go through and take a look at those photos, because they're not just your photos that are on there. There might be some completely irrelevant photos attached to your property that need to be flagged. So really simple things, beyond just name, address, and phone number that need to be completed on there. And there's some more like advanced tactics that you can use, such as the product card listings, and making sure that you've got products for amenities and products for your floor plans. And what are those linking to? What's the call to action? And, are you able to show a virtual tour or a video and link those product cards to it? There's some advanced tactics to that as well, but I mean, there's just some really basic things that do not take a lot of time at all.
Agreed. Shelly, you have some feedback on Google business listings as well. I'm sure you've updated your fair share of them as well.
I have. And, I think to Allie's point, like, it does take time to get them set up initially, but once you get them all set up, it's not like you have to completely be fussy with it. You just kind of got to go in and refresh every once in a while. And I do want to just call out one thing that Allie said too, just about your photos and flagging things that are not relevant. Like, that's a really good way to remove some of that unwanted stuff that is not applicable to the property or an experience of the property, because sometimes people just like upload random things to your Google business page and you're like, this isn't really applicable to an actual experience at my property. And that's where you can kind of have some control. I mean, they don't give you a lot of control, but that's where you can really just try to maintain what you're putting out there for your business.
Right.
I also think too, like using all of the products that are on there, like you mentioned, the products, doing the posts. If you have a social media posting tool, typically they will also allow for posting onto your Google business page too. So if you create something for Instagram or Facebook, you can usually push that out to Google business as well. So that's just a really easy way to use that content that you already have and then push that out in another location as well. And that helps with the algorithm. And I think too, if you are seeing a lot of photos or a photo that you don't necessarily want to be the main photo on your page, like you can, if you keep adding fresh photos, like Google love that. Like if you can kind of mix out some of the photos that are on there, like that's also really helpful to make sure that you have a really good presence on your Google page.
One of the things we see often too is newer lease ups that haven't had a chance to go back and change the photos from renderings to actual photos, which can make a big difference. Or the verbiage in the listing still says opening fall of 2023, and here it is fall of 2024. So making sure that you go back and check that verbiage a little bit. And we've also seen a couple of times naming conventions are different on Google per the website or ILS ads, and that can make a big difference, can't it?
Yeah, that can definitely affect your SEO, and one of the things that we found too, just as far as like talking about how much time it takes for Google business, of the audits and things that we have done, 100% of the ones that we have done have a Google business listing. So we haven't come across any properties with our auditing that don't have a Google business listing. So that time factor, it's not like you're starting necessarily from square one with a lease up where you have to mail the postcard
Clean
and
the
hope that,
property. Yeah.
the construction trailer gets it, and stuff like that. So a lot of times when you do that audit for a struggling asset, they already have a Google business listing, so you might as well utilize it. So, 100% of the audits that we've done this year have had a Google business listing, but 89% of them have not been fully optimized.
Right.
So there is definitely low-hanging fruit for anyone who has a struggling asset.
Right.
Yeah, and I think that this is also an area where Google wants to have users engaged on their website. So I think that they're really starting to put more and more stock into those listings as well. And as we're sort of seeing, I'm not sure if you guys are getting this, but I'm getting a lot of companies that are actually doing things where they can put your availability, like your real-time availability, on your Google business profile. So I think we're really only going to see this become more and more important as Google wants to keep people on their platform for their search rather than sending them out elsewhere.
Yeah,
it is such a great resource. And I want to lead us into a next location of where we tend to see friction or flush out breakdowns. But Allie, you mentioned ratings and reviews on Google and how important it is to be responding to those and to be gaining volume. We get caught up sometimes in thinking that we don't need a solution that can help us gain volume on reputation management and on ratings and reviews, but we see so many properties when we run audits that haven't had a new review in almost a year or have only had 2 in the last 3 years. And Google likes a lot of contributed content from users. And one of the things that we see when there is a high volume of reviews and recent reviews, if there is a problem to be noted with what's going on with a breakdown when prospects or residents are trying to get to the site, it's generally going to come out in the reviews. So we often will see something like, it's really hard to get a hold of somebody, or I tried to book an appointment multiple times and nobody was there when I showed up for my appointment. So that's a really good place to read through quickly if you're just acquiring a property that's coming into your portfolio, or you've got one that hit the radar all of a sudden. Check out those reviews and see if there's a common thread, because this does happen quite often in our audits, that the connection between chatbots and on-page conversion tactics isn't landing with the leasing agent the way we think it is. They maybe aren't getting those confirmations for appointments, or they're not seeing the communication thread in the chatbot. It's maybe not landing directly in the CRM. So let's talk about that a little bit. Where does that friction happen in the handoff, and what are some of the common things we're seeing? Allie, I'll let you grab that first. I'm sure you're like, where do I start?
I know, right? Yeah, well, and that's definitely something that we've seen an uptake in our audits over, the last couple of years, is that prospects are going to Google.
Yep.
It's not just the residents anymore. And so we are seeing an uptick in those that prospect indicating that it's hard to get a hold of the property. So not only the residents are saying this about the property, but also the prospects. And I could talk about reputation strategy all day long, but
we'll have you back for that one.
Yeah. But as far as that handoff goes, it is a tech, overload and stuff. So you have to make sure that those processes are working. And I know that Shelly can, talk on this a little bit too, but you've got a chat bot that is supposedly going into your CRM, or you've also got a contact card on your website that some people tend to fall into. There's contacts from ILSs that your prospects come into. Prospects are getting texts from multiple phone numbers for the same property, depending on your tech stack.
And from multiple
so there's
email
a lot
addresses.
Yes, and multiple email addresses. Yeah, so there's a lot of opportunity for error. Is what there
definitely is. Yeah.
And we're definitely seeing either that the tech is not talking to each other, or the on-site leasing team doesn't understand how to check the tech or to dive into where does the chatbot put the transcript in the guest card in my CRM system? How can I review this prospect and what they're looking for? And it's in some inconspicuous place, or it's not at all, because
that's actually a big conversation that Ronald and I had when we shared a podcast episode together, was how often you go through as a prospect the entire process of submitting a contact card and explaining through the chatbot or through the AI what it is that you're looking for, size of apartment. I mean, we invite people to be unit specific on their scheduling. And then it comes around to, by the time it gets picked up by the leasing agent, after you've had conversation with AI, the leasing agent picks it up and says, and when are you looking to move? And what size apartment do you want? And it's like, we already had this whole conversation with the AI. Where did that go?
Mm-hmm.
How are
and
you,
it's not just your property.
You're not able to see them. Yeah. And it's not intentional. The leasing team is not intending to have this breakdown, but if they don't know how much more they could be invested in that client interaction, then it's just going to be kind of a hodgepodge process.
Yeah. What kind of impression would that give if a leasing agent actually picked up and said, oh my gosh, yeah, I see that you're looking for a 2-bedroom to move into, blah, blah, blah. And you're moving from out of state. Like, what kind of impression would that give when they've repeated themselves 10 other times? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And let's face it, in this industry, we don't have the best reputation for responding to leads in the first place. Mm-hmm. So it feels like our industry is kind of at this cusp of, a high percentage of missed calls or a high percentage of inquiries that go unresponded to or get responded to days later. So anywhere that you can provide the wow factor and impress someone just in the first response is a win.
Chadwell Supply is the proud sponsor of Multifamily Media Network. Chadwell Supply is the largest privately owned MRO supply company and is committed to the multifamily industry. They deliver orders the next day from local warehouses across the United States. Chadwell Supply offers valuable resources such as maintenance training, a dedicated renovations team, and procurement platform assistance, ensuring multifamily properties operate more efficiently. Now, by partnering with Chadwell Supply, they'll help communities stand out in an increasingly competitive market. So learn more at chadwellsupply.com/difference.
Yeah. I mean, I think that it's really important. And that's why I think it's important, going back to the first topic we were talking about, is having your on-site teams understand where you are advertising so that they can have a bit of awareness around where all of these contacts are coming from. And you brought up the good point of in your CRM, it all comes into one like mashed down streamline guest card. And you'll have an ILS telling you like, oh, well, we flagged that as a hot prospect. I'm like, that's not what my team ends up seeing, because like they don't get the email that says this is a hot prospect. They get the guest card that's like, this is, Joe Schmo and he would like this. So there's no like recognition of like, this is a different from any other lead that's coming from your CRM. And then similarly with a lot of these places where you can like request a tour, they look and they feel like you are actually booking a tour, but you're not. The team gets an email, it gets in their guest card in the description, like, Janice Schmo would like to have a tour at 3 p.m. on Thursday, but it's like not a confirmed tour. So sometimes they think that they have booked something with your team that your team has no clue on. And then there's that where a lot of that friction comes from. So I think having your teams kind of understand where people are coming in on, what kind of forms you're submitting. And I would even extend that to like, if you have automations or if somebody's interacting with a chatbot, like what is that outgoing conversation looking like? So if there's an email that is an automation and it just says, hi, thanks for your interest. Like, we'd love to learn a little bit more about you. Tell us some more. That the team doesn't then, as their follow-up, send out a very similar email. And that is one thing that I always try to do, probably to varying degrees of success, but to just really say, this is what is going out on your behalf through any sort of CRM or automation. Our expectation is that you do not send this out. Like, our expectation is the email that comes from you is personal, that you've looked at the guest card.
Is the next step.
Exactly. Like, you're kind of picking up where everything else is left off. And
Yep.
now it's supposed to be you that is emailing this person and having a conversation with them, not having a, like, let's gather information with you. We're not trying to qualify the guest at that point, or the
And let's talk about all those automated messages, because there's probably an automated response that goes out from an ILS or an advertising source when you have submitted your guest card. And there's responses that come from your chatbot, your AI, and then there's your own email that comes from the CRM system. So I know I've had experiences, I'm sure you have too, where I've submitted a guest card, I get an automated response from probably the advertising source that says, a leasing agent will be with you shortly. And then the next response I get from the CRM maybe says, it appears we don't have enough information from you. Or, have you scheduled your appointment yet? And it's like, well, no, because I'm still waiting for the human agent to respond to me. And then I get another one the next day that says, a leasing agent will respond to you soon. And I think we need to be better about auditing those for sure, because we sort of expect that just the CRM messages are the ones that we need to worry about. But there's so many other messages that are coming from the sources that our prospects have interacted with. So our leasing agents understanding how many potential messages they're getting so that they can pick it up and have a really smooth handoff and sound like they're just another peer of that first message that was responded to.
And we had a situation, or I had a situation in the past where it's, our teams were putting down every unit that they were going to show a prospect. And when they did that, the prospect got reminded for every single unit. They got a reminder for every single unit that they were going to tour. And someone was like, I'm getting too many emails from you guys. And it was because of that. So, like, then we had to change our process and be like, you guys, you can't, like, there's the option to select, do not notify this person for this unit. Like, have them notified for one unit and then deselect that little button. So there's, I think, a lot of training that has to go into that prospect journey beyond just like training our teams to be personal salespeople. They have to like understand the technology.
Yeah. And training shouldn't just happen once. It shouldn't just happen when you launch the prop tech. That's when the initial training happens, but then you have new people come on board that need to be trained, and there are updates all over the place in all of our systems that might change the way that we trained previously. So I almost feel like you have to have a regular, maybe even quarterly retraining or rediscovery on the systems and tools, where maybe part of the homework assignment is for your leasing team to shop each other or shop their own property from a different source and see if there's any friction or points in the conversation that we need to modify a little bit. Because how would we know that? How would you know that? How would you know that they're getting too many messages until a prospect has to tell you that?
Yeah, well, that's why I think it's always good to just submit leads to your own, to like internally. Yeah. I mean, I think the teams should do it. I think marketers should do it themselves. Like, go through that process and just see what it's like. I think the challenge is we tend to have blind spots to our own marketing, to our own properties. So it's like, I find that as a challenge every time I try to go in and kind of do that audit and assessment myself on my own property. Because like, I know where I'm supposed to go. And even though I'm like, it's like not an organic search, but you can still find out a lot about going through that process and just submitting it and seeing what comes back to you.
Definitely.
Yeah, and I think it's a great training tool as well for the teams. Obviously for them to audit, but operations and stuff needs to as well, because with all of this, automation and things, that that human aspect is dwindling. We're seeing like more than half of our audits do not have early nurturing that is from a human. It's all automated. Do not have any follow-up that is from a post-tour follow-up that is from a human, and a lot of that too, you can see with that automated messaging that there could even be some conflicts with what the agent is saying too.
Right.
We've had that come up. Your automated message is saying something, but no, so-and-so said this.
Right. And you guys know I'm a big believer in your follow-up should be intentionally geared towards getting a prospect to the next step in their journey towards renting an apartment or telling you that this isn't the right one for them. But in a lot of cases, I feel like what we're seeing out there is automations that are a set it and forget it. They maybe came out of the box with the product that you rolled out, but they don't actually make sense with the process the prospect is going down. Or it's just follow-up flinging. It's, send the same message over and over again. Are you ready to book a tour? Are you ready to book a tour? Are you ready to book a tour? We need to be intentional to get people to the next step so they're not overloaded with messages that don't really get them where they need to go.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And then can you talk, please, about tour types?
Yeah.
This is something I think we are running into a lot. Yeah, it seems like every property website or ILS listing has a button that says choose your tour type, virtual, in person, and sometimes your ILSs might even have a button on there that says self-guided. But if you aren't actually offering those types of tours, it can become a really tough process for your prospect. Tell me about what you guys have experienced on this, because I know you've had some doozies.
Well, I always wonder, does a prospect always understand that like your Matterport and a like virtual tour are two different things? Because I think I think we kind of use that interchangeably, like take a virtual tour and you're taken to the Matterport, or a similar 3D rendered, 3D video tour or something like that. And then
there is a big difference in the language between virtual, video, digital, 3D. That means different things to different people.
Totally. So I think people don't always understand what it is they're getting when they click on that button, right? So if you have a button that says virtual tour, like where is it actually taking you? And then I don't know that our teams always even understand that either. So and I don't think that they always understand how you can achieve those in a way that is effective either, because there's no real, I think we were all kind of thrown into it. Some of us were doing it on a small scale, but we were all kind of thrown into that with 2020. But there's really no true guidance on there. And if somebody has a really good way of giving a virtual tour, I'm all ears too. Allie, you probably have thoughts, but
yeah, I mean,
Allie, what's your experience been on virtual tours?
Yeah. Live video tours, as I like to say, that they
are agent-led video tours, or virtual
agent-led.
tours.
I mean, there's so much out there, and the result can be achieved with all of them is the thing, and I think they are not dead. They are not dead. People are moving from out of state and across country all the time. People are remote workers. They don't want to get out of their house to, to stop by.
People have different schedules than your office hours.
Exactly. And being able to have that option is huge for people. Especially when they get to the point where they're asking you for a tour. They have done so much back end work. It's definitely not just a looky-loo, type of a thing. If they're asking you for a tour, they are genuinely interested.
Right. You've made it quite a ways down the funnel of the process of elimination on their list of properties they're going to look at. And I do think people ultimately want to see the actual unit in person, but I think they'd like a pre-look virtually or video wise, but you're right there. I think I saw a number 36% of traffic coming in, at least to the Twin Cities market. Other markets might be different, but are coming from out of state. They can't always be here for the tour.
Yeah. And the amount of turnover in the industry too means that training needs to carry over on how to do those and how to do, whether it is a live video tour, agent, led video tour, or if it's simply an agent sitting on the phone with you and you're both on the property website walking through a 3D virtual Matterport tour. Like, if they're not comfortable doing FaceTime or Zoom, or they know that their Wi-Fi is spotty throughout the property or something, there's so many different ways to achieve that result that prospects are looking for.
I've had such great experiences with that. I had an agent-led tour on 3D floor plans a couple months ago, and she took me through 2 floor plans and really helped me identify the closets within the units. And I was able to go right into the virtual tour, and she actually told me, like, okay, so this closet in this floor plan is going to go deeper and it's a little more of a walk-in, but if you look at the other floor plan, you can see that it's not. And that was so helpful. I wouldn't have seen that had I just whipped through the tour on my own on the website.
Totally. And I think that even when you have a kind of a snafu with technology, if it's not working, I did have an agent who was trying to do a live video tour, to use Allie's vernacular, and it didn't work. So he just followed up immediately, like sent them an email with a link to a video tour, and that prospect emailed them back like, that's exactly what I needed, and they applied. So like you can, I think just being there in a lot of ways just is helpful. Like people just want to have a live person on the other side of whatever the interaction is.
Agreed. That's one of the most frustrating things when you're trying to get information and you just keep getting rerouted through automations. I mean, we hear it too when we listen back to phone calls on some of the leasing tools that we have with clients. You listen back to phone calls and you can hear people 2 minutes into the phone call, like, I don't want to press 3. I just want a human being.
Yeah.
Or then they land at the contact center and they're like, I'm checking in on my application, and the contact center can't help with that after they've sat on hold for how long. So yeah, we need to step in a little more as human beings and deliver that handoff.
If you'd like a tour, please visit our website.
I just came from it. I sent you a contact card 3 days ago. Yeah.
Oh, that just makes my whole body cringe when
I know.
You like are listening to a call and they're like, oh, just go to our website. It's like, oh.
It was already there. So with just a few minutes left, what would you both say is a great starting point to run an audit on your website or on your experience, your digital experience in general?
Oh gosh.
Where do you start when you're the marketer with very little time?
Yeah, I think, well, this is a little bit more time intensive, and that's something that you can do at the beginning, but just like have a diagram of what that flow is. That's what's always helped me, is just having that workflow of like within your CRM even, or whatever system you have with your teams, just understand what that handoff is, like once it gets handed off, and have that there as a constant reference point to come back to. And if you have it all mapped out, because what I think happens a lot is we tend to just add tech and tech and tech, and we don't really have a thought of how that's actually like flowing to our teams. So that's one strategy that I use and has been really helpful, and especially helpful to communicate to other people within your company on this is what it's supposed to look like, so they can help identify when there's breakdown. I think the other thing is just kind of, if you only have maybe 10 minutes in a month, maybe just pick one area to audit at a time. If it's not like I can audit every single piece of technology, every single piece of content that's out there, maybe this month I'm just going to go through and just submit as a form from every single site that I'm on, or just from my website, or I'm going to go through all of my chatbots and just dedicate a little bit of time to one piece of your of your flow, and then that'll get you a long way. So you'll feel confident for like the next month that like my chatbots are in good working order, right? And then you can focus on something else the next month.
That's a good idea.
It in those little bites.
It's a great idea. Allie, what would you say?
Yeah, exactly. I mirror that completely. Where are our prospects being hit in touch points? Where are those touch points happening? And just taking those in steps. Because obviously, if you look at like the audits we do, you're looking at like 9-10 pages worth of stuff. And that can be very overwhelming when you have a lot of properties to deal with. But, just starting with like how easily, a quick Google search, how easily can my property be found when I type in best apartments in Minneapolis? Or best apartments.
Because now it's only going to show up if you've got a 4-star rating or above.
Correctly. Yeah.
Right.
Yep. Exactly. So, so just something as simple as that. And like Shelly said, take that 1 month, then the next month, chat with a chat bot and see what happens. And just see where that human handoff happens from tech to human, and where some things can be falling short there, and don't forget, it's not all digital. We focus on digital when we're doing our audits and things. Sometimes it does lead to phone, like we talked about, but you got to call your properties.
Yeah. We uncovered one that had a voicemail still from 2020. Office is not open directly right now. Yep. Yeah, I think those are great recommendations. And I would also say if you have the ability to enlist your leasing agents in the process too and work in collaboration together, maybe create a Google Doc or a SharePoint file or whatever system you're on where each leasing agent can go in. Maybe January is, interact with your chatbot month and tell us if you're experiencing anything that we should go look at. And February is, check your Google business profile. Is there anything that isn't accurate that we need to be fixing? And that way for the marketer, each month, you have a due date from your leasing teams on when their feedback comes in, and you can just schedule a couple of days behind that to do some cleanup and fix things. Because again, you might be 1 or 2 or 3 marketers versus 50, 60, 70 sites or more. So having a little bit of collaboration and skin in the game from everybody to make sure that it's a seamless experience would be helpful.
And honestly, when you have that process down, it's going to make it even easier when you bring on new tech or have a new acquisition or something. Yep. It's just going to make everything so much more smooth versus bringing on new tech and finding an error and then realizing that error is multiplied by like 100 because
right. And we could have a whole nother hour conversation about this, but the last thing that you want to have happen is that leasing and marketing become an us versus them. Well, that's marketing. That's their stuff. Like they've got to take care of that. Or well, leasing's not picking up the leads. That's very much dependent on each other. So you could have the best marketing, but if it's not getting across to the leasing teams or they're not trained on how to receive it and how to interact with it, then you're going to have breakdown.
Yep. And I would also add too that like, don't look at a breakdown as a failure. A breakdown is an opportunity to improve.
Absolutely.
And I always like carry that with me because I do feel like I've come from, previous roles where it was like the breakdown was a failure and you feel such shame in it. So it almost makes you like,
how did I miss that?
Yes. And it's like, and that's where you have to just embrace like, okay, this is maybe a setback, but we can fix it. We can move on. We can be better. And it's an opportunity to do that. So I think that's sort of what I was talking about a little bit at the top of the hour. Like we really have to embrace the finding of those breakdown points so that we can be better and stronger.
Absolutely. I love that. Okay. Final question for both of you. I ask this of all of my guests. It's called Optimized, right? The podcast. So tell me what you do personally or professionally to optimize in your daily life. Who wants to go first? I always like leaving listeners with a little tip. We've heard some really simple and great thoughts on this.
I mean, I have so many processes in my daily life just with working from home and 2 kids and a husband that travels. I like to think that we're pretty optimized. I do always kind of think it's sad when I tell people that my husband and I have to send each other meeting planners for a lot of things, but that's becoming a common thing. But I mean, I guess this is professional. This is probably not professional. It's personal. But here's a personal optimization is that I have a daily laundry schedule. That Mondays are makeup Mondays, Tuesdays are towel Tuesdays, Wednesdays are rug
Nice.
Wednesdays, Thursdays are throw blanket Thursday.
Oh my
Friday
gosh,
is
I need to do this.
Finish it Friday, which is usually whites. And Saturday and Sunday are sheets.
That's amazing. And I do have to say, Allie, that your schedule, your calendar is so optimized. Every time I interact with your calendar, like it'll tell me, oh, Allie's out of the office in a meeting until 4:30 or currently outside of working hours. Like you are so good at maintaining your calendar. I love it. Shelly, how about you? How do you optimize?
Oh gosh, I think I love a good app that promises, the world of organization. But one of my favorites, and I think I've told you about this before, but it's called Style Book, and it is a outfit planning app. And so pretty much it looks like, in Clueless when Cher sort of had the outfit put together for her, it kind of does that. And again, it's another thing that's a lot of setup at the beginning. You got to get all of your articles of clothing in the app. But once you do it, it's just there, and you can just go bloop, 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 and plan your outfits for the week. And that just takes so much pressure off the mornings. It just kind of sets you up for success right away in the morning. And then it also has a packing component. So like, I usually just now, I don't even have to make a list for packing. Like I just copy and paste the previous.
You're going to a conference, you give it the weather and temp by day, and away it goes. And you always have the best outfits, honestly.
Oh, well, thank you.
They're always so cutely put together.
Oh, well, I appreciate that. But yeah, that's one of my favorite apps right now, and does
help my
life a lot, I will say.
This has been so fun. Thank you both so much for coming on and chatting. And I have a feeling that this little trio crew session is not going to be the first and the last. We're going to do these again because there are so many components of this conversation that we could have dug into for an hour on their own, right? So listeners, thanks for joining us today and taking the time. If you heard something you liked, please share, leave a response on it, and go visit Multifamily Media Network for more posts and blog posts and content as you choose. And if you're a multifamily marketer, we certainly invite you to come and explore Cadence Marketing Solutions and especially Cadence Run Club. It's all for multifamily marketing influencers. We're there on a mission to support the role that you are trying to get your arms around and invite new members all the time. So thanks again for coming out. And until next time, go optimize, find that 1% in your day.
Thank you again to Chadwell Supply for sponsoring this episode. Chadwell Supply delivers unforgettable service with next day delivery, online and in-person maintenance training, procurement platform, assistance to make your ordering simple. Visit chadwellsupply.com/difference to learn how Chadwell Supply will make your day better.